Forge FC is ready for their upcoming match.
Simply stunning stuff.
And finally, their goal.
My word, what a rocket.
Now, let's get you up to date with Anthony Urciuoli and Match Day Preview on the Forge Audio Network.
Hello, Forge fans. It's the Forge Audio Network. I'm your host, Anthony Urciuoli. It's the Match Day Preview. Forge FC, their final road match of the season in Edmonton on Sunday. Kickoff at 5 p.m. Third place Forge taking on 8th place Edmonton. Now, I think I speak for all Forge fans. I never thought I would say this, but thank you, York. And thank you, Mo Babuli, who's done so much for Forge, and he helped them out again. Now a member of York United. They beat Valor Friday night 3-1. That's good news for Forge, because what that means is if Forge beats Edmonton, they will clinch a playoff spot. So York helping out Forge and themselves. York now just 4 points out of a playoff spot. Now they only have 2 matches remaining. We'll get a more holistic view of the Canadian Premier League and the table and the playoff scenarios and the clinching scenarios momentarily. CanPL.ca's Charlie O'Connor-Clark is going to join us, and so we'll get a full deep dive into what we're looking at heading down the stretch here. There's only a few matches remaining in the regular season for Forge. There are 4 matches. This one against Edmonton, as I mentioned, the final away match. Then 3 consecutive home matches. Forge is in a pretty favorable spot here. Not only do they control their own fate in terms of where they finish on the table, because they do have the highest points percentage in the league. So they're 2 points out of first place with a match in hand. And that's 2 points behind Atletico Ottawa, who is still in first, Cavalry in second. They have 41 points. Ottawa's 42. Forge has 40. So Forge in control here, and Valor holding down the final playoff spot. They are tied with Pacific, who's in 5th. Pacific, though, with 2 matches in hand. So a lot of moving around still to do in terms of figuring out the final playoff positioning. It's become a 6-team race for the final 4 spots here, with Pacific and York on the outside looking in. All of Forge's remaining matches, including this next one against Edmonton, against clubs outside of the playoffs. So that could mean 2 things. You're playing against lesser opponents, points-wise, but on the flip side of that, you're playing against clubs that are either still in the hunt for a playoff spot, so they're in must-win mode, making them dangerous, or they're just playing loose with nothing to lose, also making them very dangerous. So whichever way you look at it, Forge, it could be an easy road, it could be a difficult road. Regardless, Forge has to definitely show up for these final 4 matches if they want to finish in a playoff spot. I think they're in good position to at least do that, but Forge has loftier goals than just making the playoffs. In fact, head coach, technical director of Forge FC, Bobby Smyrniotis, speaking to the media in his pre-match press conference, he talked about the challenges facing a club like Edmonton, who, despite being in last place, is always a difficult club to play against, especially on the road. They play that low block, that frustrating defensive style where it's really hard to break down and score goals against. Edmonton's in a lot of close games. They only have 16 points in 25 matches, but they play in a lot of very close matches. They are tough out, and Forge is well aware of that because they've experienced it firsthand. Here's Coach Bobby talking about the difficulties playing Edmonton, and the fact that, listen, when you're with Forge FC, the reality is the playoffs are great, but there's a lot more at stake here if you're Forge FC. Here's Bobby.
Yeah, to be honest, they've been playing some excellent football in the last few games. The results don't go their way, but they played last week at home against Cavalry, and I thought they were very good. They've created more attacking opportunities than their opponent. Similar to the week before, I think it was against York. They're playing with a free mindset. They're not going to make the playoffs, but they've got nothing to lose as well. So I think that takes a little bit of pressure and a little bit of edge off the players and allows them to go out there and express themselves. And that's the type of team we've seen, good on the counterattack, good compact and the wide play in different phases of play. And we know, and I think that they've taken points from almost everybody in the league this year. So we have to make sure that we're at our best when it comes to Sunday, because it's an important 3 points for us.
It's no easy feat to make the playoffs in this league, especially this season with how close it's been. Is it fair to say that Forge has some loftier goals than just finishing in the top 4?
Yeah, of course, it's the DNA of this club. From going back to preseason of 2019 and putting this team together, this team is and its DNA is to win. And that's what we're set up to do here. We have everything in our infrastructure. We have everything within the staff and the teams that we've built to be able to win. And I think we've done a pretty good job at that over the first 3 years. And that has to be the DNA of this club going forward in the future, beyond the time that I'm here and the players that are in this dressing room. It's got everything as a club, everything it needs to succeed.
Joining the match day preview on the Forge Audio Network now is Charlie O'Connor Clark from CanPL.ca. Charlie, welcome.
Thanks, Anthony. It's always a pleasure to do this with you.
Yeah, and this season's been a pleasure. We're only a couple weeks out from the playoffs, and still, 6 teams are in the 4-team playoff race. At one point, it looked like it was just a 4-horse race, and Valor came on, and now York has come on. It's been, I don't remember another CPL season quite like this one.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever been this competitive or as close. I mean, I think at the start of August, Valor were in 5th and they were 6 points out of that top 4 spot. And it seemed like, we were about to see some separation. It looked like the two halves of the table were about to break off, but a lot of teams at the top of the table dropped points. They were not really in great form in August, and teams just below them, Valor and York United, have been very good the last few weeks. They've made it a lot closer. Valor, obviously, technically occupying that spot on Saturday morning. They're tied on points at Pacific, but they had a tough one on Friday night against York, who are now all of a sudden just 4 points back. It's crazy.
Yeah, Mo Babuli doing things for Forge still. So Forge just, a win away from clinching a playoff spot. Now, they do have loftier goals, of course, and they're looking more in terms of championship. But, Forge isn't in the clear yet. And I think this is kind of the idea here. You may have loftier goals, but playoffs are not a guarantee at this point, which is kind of strange to be this late in the season. I think it's unfortunate that York wasn't playing this way. Now, they didn't have Mo Babuli and they didn't quite have this lineup, but you almost wish York was this good early on just to make the season even that much more interesting, because I can't imagine what a strong York side would have added to this race had it been even earlier in the season.
Yeah, and it is night and day, the current York side and what they were at the start of the season. I think they went 10 games or something without scoring a goal. Yeah. But now I think they've scored 3 goals in like 5 games since Mo Babuli's joined that side. They've been, playing the best football in the league for the last few weeks now. So they're right in there, and they surely if they keep most of this group around next year, they'll be right in there again. So it's always good to have a lot of competition for these places. And as you mentioned with Forge specifically, they've got to play York, I think next weekend, which is always a tough one. And we all remember what happened last time York went to Tim Hortons Field, and as I'm sure Bobby Smyrniotis does. So that will be one to circle on the calendar for sure.
Yeah. So, Forge, they have Edmonton, they have York, they have Pacific, they have Halifax. Technically, those 4 clubs at this point, at least, are not in the playoff picture. So you look at it on the surface and say, well, they're playing, 4 lesser teams. But there's the flip side of that, is these are clubs that some of them aren't out of the playoff picture by any means. So they're in must-win mode. And the other ones really don't have anything to lose at this point in the season. It almost makes them more dangerous.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of these teams that aren't maybe necessarily in the playoff hunt, they love the idea of playing spoiler. FC Edmonton has been speaking about that for a couple weeks now, I think. Obviously, they've unfortunately been eliminated a couple weeks ago, but all of their players have said several times when they play these teams that are in the championship hunt, the title race, they want to beat them. They want to prove that they can compete with those teams and spoil some parties, so to speak. So they're always dangerous. And all of these other teams, obviously that Pacific game closer to the end of the season for Forge will absolutely not be an easy one. We've seen what Pacific can do this year, so they're not one to take lightly. Really, none of these opponents are.
It's interesting because we now have, we're going to crown a regular season champion, and you wonder how that might change the way clubs approach these final couple of weeks. Even Bobby talked about the fact that, I don't know now, you're starting to think of minutes and maybe resting players, but with first place on the line, and now that you're playing for something, it might change some of the mindsets heading in down the stretch here.
Yeah, I think every team definitely wants to finish first, wants to win that regular season title. It's something that obviously Forge took pride in last year. It's something that Cavalry took pride in 2019, and still do to this day, to be honest. So the fact that it's very close at the top of the table, everybody wants to have that feather in your cap. And the other thing is, heading into the playoffs, everybody wants to ensure they have home field going into the playoffs, right? Especially for that final, which is a 1-game knockout, and it's obviously a massive advantage if you are playing at home for that. So I think every team will be, even if they do clinch a playoff spot, say this weekend possibly, I think every team will be fighting tooth and nail right to the end to come at least as high up in the table as they can.
The league's gone through different changes with how it approaches the playoff format and, regular season champions. This current format you have the regular season champion, you have the top 4, you have the 2-leg semi, and then the 1-match final. What do you think of this current format? Do you think there are more changes to come, or do you think the league is kind of settled on something here?
I think that this is a good way of going about it. I really like that. Obviously we've got sort of two things here. We've got the regular season title being recognized, which I think is important for recognizing the team that's done it, most consistently over the year. And then, the nature of sports in North America is that everybody loves those knockout games, right? Everybody loves those big occasions, those cup matches. And I think those are always an incredible way and a memorable way to end a season, to crown a champion that way as well. And I think every team will probably feel similarly about that. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and it ensures that really we're going to have probably 2 months of entertaining and intense matches where teams really don't want to give an inch. So I think it's going to make sure that the season ends in a memorable and just exciting way.
Not everyone's crazy about change, but I think the beauty of this league and the evolution of it and being in the early stages of it is it's, you understand the fact that there's going to be some tinkering, some changes, some improvements. And I like the fact that they're always kind of thinking of ways to improve things. In terms of player awards, is there talk about expanding those and maybe changing the way those are handed out?
I don't know in particular for that. I'd say maybe stay tuned for things on that. But I think there's definitely discussion around the awards and how is the best way to recognize the best players in our league, because obviously it's something that's very important, right? When you have stars in the league, when you have players that have committed so much to the game in this country, you want to find the right way to recognize them.
All right, stay tuned. I like that little teaser there. So CanPL.ca newsroom podcast. There's a great breakdown. It's about just playoff scenarios and clinching scenarios at CanPL.ca. So head over there to get the latest and to be up to date as possible on what's going on around the league. Charlie, great stuff as always. I appreciate you joining us.
Thanks, Anthony. Anytime, man.
All right, that was COC, and you can always catch Charlie O'Connor-Clark and the gang, Mitchell Tierney, Christian Jack at CanPL.ca, and by listening to the Newsroom podcast to get your full rundown of the league. For Forge stuff, you come here. For CPL stuff in general, you go to CanPL.ca and listen to the Newsroom podcast. All right, as mentioned, Forge FC. This is it. We're down to the final stretch here. Forge have 4 matches remaining. Edmonton, and then 3 matches in a stretch of 9 days, all at home. And if you're going to be in Hamilton for any of those 3 matches, go over to ForgeFC.ca and get some tickets to these matches because they're going to be good ones. First of all, October 1st, that's against York. Playoff implications. In fact, a win by Forge could knock York completely out of playoff contention. It'd be some nice revenge for that last match in Hamilton between York and Forge that York took, and Forge was not pleased with their performance. So October 1st, and then on the 5th, a very exciting event. It's the first annual Spark Summit at Tim Hortons Field. Forge FC so proud to be on the front foot when it comes to this initiative. So the Spark Summit aims to connect professional women in sports business and inspire conversations around fostering gender equity in sports, and also shining a light on those who are leading the way across all sectors of sports business. So the event will take place from 5 to 7 on October 5th. That's a Wednesday. It will include a panel of women from professional athletes, from office executives, sports media personalities, speaking about their experiences navigating the world of sports. There'll be a Q&A session shortly after, and following the panel, all attendees can enjoy Forge FC's Women in Sports match against Pacific. That's at the club level at Tim Hortons Field. It will be hosted by Jacqueline Dory, host and producer at CBC Sports. Deidre Dion will be a panelist, Olympic medalist and sports media executive. Andy Petrillo, we're all well aware of Andy's work with One Soccer and with CBC as well. Andy Petrillo will be on the panel, and Taylor McIntyre will also be on the panel, football coach at McMaster University. That's from 5 to 7, a networking event, and there will be networking during the match between Pacific and Forge FC. Go to ForgeFC.ca for more information and to register. Ticket sales, $10 from every sale, will be donated to Boys and Girls Club of Hamilton and Halton. So you can be a part of that on October 5th. And then there's a home match on October 9th as well. Plenty of opportunity for you to head on over to Tim Hortons Field and be part of the action. So make sure you do so. Forge Edmonton, the next matchup. That's Sunday, 5 o'clock. Check the Forge Audio Network, however you get your Forge content, whether it's via podcast, by subscribing to the channel on YouTube at ForgeFC.ca, or by following the Forge FC social media channels. Coming up, 3 keys to the match, breaking down what Forge have to do to earn 3 points on the road in Edmonton. And then following the match, it'll be the match in review, and we'll break down the action. Forge fans, this is the most exciting part of the year. Make sure you're part of the action. Subscribe to the Forge Audio Network. I'm Anthony Urciuoli. We will talk to you very soon.
Forge FC is prepared, and now you are informed. This has been Match Day Preview with Anthony Urciuoli on the Forge Audio Network. Subscribe on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.